Hey folks, good afternoon and welcome to episode 3 of the Road to Masters. This is only a short series. I don't want to take over the channel and do another Gears Tactics-esque series where we post 50 videos. I just wanted to do a roundup and a wrap up, so we've got a couple videos left maybe. And then again, on Friday, I'd love to see you there, we have the montage. I'll just zoom my camera in there. We have the montage, which is the highlights of all of the quote best plays I've done. Obviously there are quite a few missing out because only sometimes I remember to click the capture button, but there are a few good plays in there and hopefully you'll enjoy it. As you can see on screen, we made it into Onyx. Talking about yesterday's video, which I think missed the sub box, by the way, so if you missed yesterday's episode, I'd love it if you could head back, click the like button and drop a comment and watch it, because it kind of explains a little bit of how we reached this point. So we reached this point by pretty much focusing on what I call like fundamentals. I'm against a stack here, and these gameplays are not like, hey, here's a brilliant gameplay. The gameplays are just randomly selected during the ranking up process to give you an idea of how things went, because you know, it's if you just give perfect videos all of the time, it doesn't really give a representation, does it? So you can see, just for the mean value, I've put the PlayStation controller on screen, and the eagle-eyed viewers might have already noticed what buttons I'm pressing. I'm pressing the A button and LB. So what I have done, and where the big progression was made, was when I got into Onyx, I was working on the fundamentals like we explained in the last video, not trying to not roll as much, just focusing on, you know, landing shots, just landing shots, hitting people in animations and moving around the hill correctly. There's no fancy, you know, reaction shots, there's no incredible movement. We are just focusing on the basics, and that got me to Onyx. And then at the Onyx level, slash diamond, I was beginning to have a problem, or not really a problem, but it was frustrating me of how much I was rolling, as that guy rolls on screen as well. For me, having not rolled since like Gears 3, you know, Gears 4 PC I turned off the roll, and Gears 5 I turned off the roll. On Xbox you can't really turn off the roll. I know you can in some ways, but in other ways there is still problems with that control scheme. And I had the developer Node come into the chat. Node happened to be there and thereabouts, and you can see now that my movement is drastically improved, even compared to PC. I am nowhere near as good at movement on PC as I am on the Xbox. It's just more fluid with the sticks, so personally, I think that if the game had a superb netcode, I would probably stick with controller the whole time, because the level of movement and outplay I can do with the sticks would be so good that I would drop a little bit of accuracy on, say, the sniper or lancer for that movement on the shotgun and stuff. So you can see there, you know, I'm no longer rolling and I've got pretty good movement. So how has this been achieved? Because that's really the big step in this road to Masters. What's happened is I have put on the shooter control scheme, and I believe I have remapped, I think it's left click to be LB. So basically what it means is not only is left bumper bounce for me, so not only is the left bumper the bounce button, it is now also the run button. What this basically means is, obviously it's been a bit of a mind fuck to learn. Having only played on a certain control scheme for like the longest period of time, you know, I was the guy that, I know I probably should have learned alternate in Gears 2 to stop rolling, but my brain was so accustomed to, shall we say, playing with the old control scheme that I just couldn't get used to it. However, because I've stepped away from the game for a long period of time and I then learnt the game on PC, I'm using very different controls anyway than I would do on an Xbox. So then relearning controls, I felt, was going to be difficult either way. Going back to Xbox, I'd have to sort of not learn the controls, but remember them. So I was like, listen, if I'm going to have to remember the controls, I may as well remember some new ones. So I put on shooter control scheme. What this allows me to do is, instead of miss-rolling, so when I press the cover button, I will either do one of two things. I will not take cover, or I will run. Now, this does have some adverse effects, but this is the big step that I think maybe a few of you at home could take as well. You could give it a go. Most people don't really know about the multiple control schemes and like the remapping. So you can also remap certain buttons so they are on press and not on sort of release. That means that when you press the button, like say take cover, it immediately takes cover rather than checking. There are also some other really, really wacky control schemes that Node recommended to me that they feel so different. So when you're playing with the default control scheme, you're obviously playing with like your thumb on the right thumbstick and your thumb then moves to the A button. On other control schemes, what I described it as, and the developer Node also seemed to like the analogy, is it's like holding a steering wheel. That's the only way I can explain it. And you'll know if you try out some of these control schemes what I mean. You know, you do not have to take your thumbs off the... You never have to take your thumbs off the analog sticks. So you can actually be really accurate given enough practice. You're no longer going press A back to thumbstick, press A back to thumbstick. You've just pressing LB with your fingers and your thumbs are doing this sort of driving. And it feels very, very odd at first. It feels very, very odd. But you can see here, like the movement I've got, I know I died there, but the movement I've got is, I look like a different player in comparison to last episode. Now, this movement isn't always good. And I'll be honest, I kind of just was having fun and doing it over the top. But I think there's definitely a balance here with this control scheme. So I can't roll, which has made my play a lot better, because then when you can't roll, things just feel way more fluid. Because in this game, like you see that back A, like that kind of like movement and back A, it looks like yeah, I look like a completely different player. I'm sure people that have watched my early controller VODs and then are watching this, and it's just transformed how I play. And honestly, I feel like this control scheme, maybe not the modified version that I've done, but maybe some of the other control schemes feel like the future of Gears. They feel like this is what a new player into the franchise should be playing. It seems more natural. So to give you a rundown of exactly what I've changed is, at this moment in time, left bumper is wall bounce, and if I miss bounce, I will run. Now the issue is in this game, because there is a roadie run delay, so when you roadie run and then try to shoot, there's a delay. Like there wasn't in Gears 1, but there has been in every other Gears, apart from like Gears 2 launch. My god, Gears 2 launch roadie run was sweet in that regard. But, you know, there's always a delay. So sometimes where I was struggling was sometimes I wanted to bounce, but then I would... sometimes I would want to bounce, but then I would run. And then I'd sort of not realise I was in a run. I wouldn't pull back on the stick to cancel the run. And I would then be stuck in an animation where I can't shoot. And that would be a problem. So the learning curve of this control scheme is sort of figuring out when you're going to run, when you're going to... Sorry, my eyes sore. When you're going to run, when you're going to bounce, and, you know, like this type of stuff, you know, this kind of roadie run strafe and bouncing feels fantastic. Feels absolutely fantastic to pull off. And I do recommend... I know it's difficult, but stuff like that, you see, that movement left to right, she didn't hit me. If the netcode was better on this game, you could definitely really go all out with the movement and juke people, I feel like. So I know this episode's been a weird start. It's just me talking about the control scheme, but this has honestly been the most impactful thing I've ever changed in Gears. Obviously, I've played with the same control scheme for years and years and years, and I've never bothered tweaking it. I've always found it awkward. This one just didn't feel awkward. I think if you've played only default for your entire life and you're trying to then change to a different control scheme, you're going to struggle. But if you've ever changed the control schemes before, you'll probably be more open to changing it again. And I really do think maybe it doesn't give you an advantage, but it definitely makes you play in an entirely different way. You can roadie run strafe, and again, if there was no roadie run delay, man, this would be a magical control scheme. But it's allowed me to now have confidence that I can sort of button mash, if that makes sense. Like, if I want to take cover, I'm not having to wait and judge where I'm going to roll. Like, you can see I'm just popping off with the control scheme. And it's like no other. Now, it's not going to suddenly turn you into a freak, but I feel like it's very natural. And the reason I think they've called it the shooter control scheme is because this is for shooters, and they want people that are new to Gears to have this experience. And I think that this should be the default control scheme. Maybe not my heavily edited one, but I feel like if you're brand new to the franchise, this control scheme makes way more sense. So what's going on? Your D-pad changes the weapons as normal. The A button checks your TACCOM. The X button is reload. And the B button is roll, so you can still roll if you want. The triangle button does sort of... the Y button does sort of stuff in PvE. Now, the only difficult thing with this was, at the beginning, it was right bumper to spot. So when you've got both thumbs on the sticks and you've got a thumb on LB, and then you want to shoot somebody, you then also need to be able to click the button to spot. Which is pretty much impossible. What I ended up doing was I ended up remapping the right bumper to right click, so I can sort of click to spot. And then it's a bit weird. You have to, like, the only downside is you have to then hold the right thumbstick clicked in to chainsaw. Which means you can't really walk because you're pressing it in. But you very rarely really need to chainsaw in this game. It's such a rarity that I can forgive it. There's only one big problem with this control scheme, and obviously it would be nice if they tweaked it, but they don't seem to be. When you press reload, so you will press LB and X to reload around a wall, you cannot remove the fact that grab is reload. You just can't change it. So when I'm trying to up A cover and reload at the same time, so when you're running away and you're trying to reload, if it's on a ledge, sort of like the covers we're fighting in front of now, you try to up A around that block and reload, you will just grab. You'll do that yank and grab over the top of the... yeah, you will just do that grab. So you sort of have to remind yourself, like, wait till you've gone round the up A. It probably doesn't make sense, but it will if you try it. And it probably is very confusing. Like, LB to run, LB to cover, X to reload. It's a bit of a mind fuck. And people would come into my stream and they'd ask me, why would you be playing this? It just doesn't make sense. I played against Matt Adrenaline. I think we lost that game, or maybe no, I think we won it because they had a quitter, unfortunately, but it was a close game. And people were saying, oh yeah, he's learning controller and he's also on shooter control scheme. I don't know why. Well, the reason why I was on the shooter control scheme was I literally just felt it was better. It's so nice to not roll, and also you can roadie run strafe so well, which listen, I know it's not really advantageous in this game because you have the delays, but bouncing like that and then backshotting, or, you know, sort of whip shotting somebody, it just feels very satisfying. So the most important change happened that when I went to Onyx, I decided to learn this new control scheme, and then on the push towards trying to reach Masters, it was just a case of getting used to the control scheme. Like, a lot of times I just ran by accident. A lot of times I would lose gunfights because I would just simply press the wrong button. But I mean, you can see this movement that I'm producing. It might be unnecessary, it might look zoomerish, but I still feel that if the netcode was pin sharp, like, you could probably duck in and out and kill people like this. So I don't think it's the control scheme's problem. I think it's more of like a, not aim assist, but, you know, the whole shebang of all of that stuff adding up, that sometimes you can be clipped when you probably shouldn't. But man, it's very fun. So that was a good example of me roadie running, but coming out at the right time. So as you roadie run, you sort of either let go of LB or pull back on the stick. And you can see me here just like running amok and bouncing about. And you know, it's not ideal, but I would say it's definitely better than alternate. So I know, again, weird video, kind of rambling, but that was the big step. So I was getting used to the fundamentals, and I just followed those fundamentals to get into Onyx. When I got into Onyx, I was just getting sick of misrolling, because there are some covers in this game that it's just hard to judge when you're moving so fast. And I did not want to misroll, so this control scheme allows you don't misroll, you misrun, and a misrun can actually throw people off. You know, you can see me just doing the stupid bounce in here. And yeah, it's zoomerish, but I mean, it felt fun. I tell you what it felt like. It felt like when what I call zoomers moan about slow movement and all of that stuff. This is on the new tuning, by the way. On the new tuning. I can understand their frustration, because if they've put a ton of time into learning something, you know, like they're always behind them. If you put a ton of time into learning a certain style and it gets removed, I understand you're going to be frustrated. But if you've watched footage like this, like me bouncing and back aiming people like mad, wall bouncing all over the show and shooting, you can still be very, very fast on this new tuning. And I don't think it needs to be any faster than this. You know, any faster than this, you're starting to bounce so much that you end up in the middle. Like if you bounce left to right, you just kind of end up a still target in the middle. But it's been very, very enjoyable. It really did make this week of playing Gears very fun. You know, like I miss playing there, but I'm like just testing out my potential. But that's what I can say. That is why I started this series and sort of carried on with it, is because once I'd done the fundamentals and got into gold and I was like used to the game a bit, this completely transformed how I played, and it was so fun. Like I lost games that I definitely could have won if I'd have plugged in the keyboard, and I lost matches and lost gunfights where I would misrun, or I would bounce too much, or I wouldn't bounce enough. But when you do get a kill like that, and if I could have killed the second guy, I will admit it feels very, very satisfying. So in a weird way, I'm not against the whole bouncing aspect. And what it kind of taught me, which is these videos are all about learning and stuff, is there is two types of like zoomer. There's like the zoomer that like bounces enough and tries to shoot and gets the job done, and then there's the one that's just trying to just spam the button as fast as humanly possible, and it's just obnoxious. I think I've kind of found a middle ground, and I can understand the quote zoomer viewpoint of why they enjoy it so much. And I was a big advocate of like get rid of it out of the game and sort of, you know, take it out. I actually think I wouldn't take it out of the game right now. I think what I would do is I would put a few more set animations in the game to maybe punish it. Well, you know, there, you see there, I tried to reload and it grabbed. That's an exact example. So what I mean is, I'm not exactly sure how I would do it. I'd have to think about it, but I'd still like you to be able to zip about, because I think if the netcode was good enough, you could dodge and outplay. If the roadie run strafe was in there, you could dodge and outplay. If the strafe was fast enough, you could have a mix match and a mashup of all the styles. I think it'd be very, very fun. I think it would be very, very fun. But at the moment, there's like the mashup of the playstyles isn't quite there. Like in some ways, quote, being a boomer is overpowered, and in some ways being a zoomer is overpowered, which kind of sounds like it's balanced, but sometimes it's a bit strange to explain. You'll have to play the control scheme to understand what I mean, because it just transforms how you think and play about the game. But very, very much enjoyed it. Very, very much enjoyed it. And that was kind of this weird video. It was bouncing about like an idiot, but still somehow making it work. And sort of what ends up happening now is it's like I've got the fundamentals of like how to be a boomer, and now during like the Onyx to Diamond period, I'm trying to figure out how much can I bounce without it being over the top, and then hopefully I'll put those skills together and have a nice balance of like sometimes I just want to Lancer and hard aim, and other times I feel like, oh, actually I could outplay this guy and bounce about. So it's just been about finding that balance. And again, this is the shooter control scheme, which I feel like has definitely changed how I played, which is really, really interesting. So cheers for tuning in. As always, you can leave a comment, leave a like, check out the previous episode. You can subscribe on Twitch. You can join the Zicarios on YouTube. That is massively, massively helpful. And also you can check out a couple videos on screen. I recommend probably the last episode, which talked about some fundamentals. But thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace out.